Daniel woke up early, dressed carefully in his best suit, and prayed before leaving the house. He had two important interviews scheduled that morning, one at 8:30 a.m. and another at 9:45 a.m., both at well-known companies he had hoped to join. His first interview was at a financial firm. Despite arriving early and answering all the technical questions correctly, the interviewer seemed disinterested. Rushing through the session, Daniel noticed the man checking his watch multiple times before finally saying, "We'll let you know," in a tone that made it clear they wouldn't. Disappointed but determined, Daniel headed to his second interview at a tech startup. This time, the hiring manager was engaged, even nodding approvingly at his answers, until the final question. "Do you have experience with this specific software?" Daniel hesitated. It was one skill he lacked. The manager's expression shifted, and the conversation ended shortly after with a polite but firm rejection. By 10 a.m., Daniel had left both offices, his confidence shaken. He stood outside the second building, staring at his reflection in the glass doors, wondering what had gone wrong. The morning had not gone as planned. Daniel boarded the crowded bus that morning, heading to another interview at a shell company he had researched the night before. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle pattered against the windows as the vehicle rumbled through the city. He sat near the middle, scrolling through notes on his phone, mentally rehearsing his answers. Then chaos, a deafening screech of metal, a blur of motion. The bus swerved violently, colliding with an oncoming truck before flipping onto its side. Glass shattered. Screams filled the air as bodies were thrown against seats, luggage, and each other. The world spun in a haze of panic and pain. When the movement finally stopped, silence followed, heavy and eerie. Smoke curled from the wreckage. Daniel stirred, blinking dust from his eyes. He was unharmed. No cuts, no bruises, not even a scratch. Around him, others lay motionless, some groaning in agony, others terrifyingly still. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance. Stumbling out of the twisted wreck, he stood in shock, staring at the devastation. Paramedics rushed past him, pulling survivors from the wreckage, but none as untouched as he was. His clothes weren't torn. His bag was still slung over his shoulder. It was as if the crash had bent around him, sparing him completely. A firefighter paused, eyes widening. "How are you, even?" He cut himself off, shaking his head before hurrying to help others. Daniel stood frozen amid the chaos, his heart pounding. He should have been broken. He should have been dead. But somehow, he wasn't. The bus accident had left the entire street in chaos. Flashing lights, twisted metal, and the urgent shouts of first responders. Daniel, though physically unharmed, was in shock, his hands trembling as he numbly answered questions from a paramedic. "You're sure you don't need to go to the hospital?" the medic asked, eyeing him with disbelief. Daniel shook his head, still dazed. "I'm fine." But time had slipped away. The interview, the whole reason he'd been on that bus, was now impossible. The shell company's office was still blocks away, and the entire road was blocked off by emergency vehicles. Even if he ran, he'd never make it in time. Pulling out his phone, he stared at the recruiter's contact. His thumb hovered over the call button, but what would he say? "I was in an accident, but I'm not hurt, yet I still can't come." It sounded insane. The missed opportunity gnawed at him as he watched the wreckage being cleared. A police officer approached, clipboard in hand. "We'll need your full statement. It might take a while." Daniel exhaled, defeated. There was no way out. The interview was over before it even began. Daniel stood at the edge of the accident scene, the weight of the morning pressing down on him. His suit was wrinkled, his tie slightly loose, and his mind still reeling from the shock of the crash. The police had taken his statement. The paramedics had finally stopped questioning him. And now, with no interview to attend, he had no choice but to turn back home. The walk was long, public transport was suspended on that route, and he couldn't afford a cab. His stomach growled. He had skipped breakfast to make the early interview, and now, with no job secured, every penny counted. He checked his wallet, just enough for a cheap meal, but if he spent it now, he wouldn't have anything left for tomorrow. He clenched his jaw and kept walking. By the time he reached his small apartment, exhaustion had settled deep into his bones. He dropped his bag by the door and slumped onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. His rent was due in 3 days, and his last paycheck had already been stretched thin. The fridge was nearly empty, half a loaf of stale bread, a few eggs, and some condiments. He'd been counting on this job to pull him through. The next few weeks were a blur of hunger and frustration. He scraped by on instant noodles and whatever cheap groceries he could stretch, skipping meals when necessary. His electricity bill went unpaid, and he spent evenings in the dim glow of his phone screen to conserve battery. Every job application he sent out felt like shouting into the void. No responses, no calls back. Then, the landlord came. A hard knock rattled the door one evening. Daniel opened it to see Mr. Kowalski, a broad-shouldered man with a permanent scowl, holding a ledger. "Rent's late," he said, voice flat. Daniel swallowed. "I know. I just need a few more days." "You said that last week," Kowalski interrupted. "I'm not running a charity. Pay by Friday, or you're out." Daniel tried to argue, but the landlord cut him off, stepping closer, his tone sharp. "No excuses. Money or keys. Your choice." The door slammed shut behind him as he left, leaving Daniel standing there, fists clenched. The pressure was suffocating. No job, no money, and now, the very real threat of being thrown out onto the street. That night, he lay awake. The gnawing hunger in his stomach nothing compared to the frustration burning in his chest. He had survived a deadly accident without a scratch, only to watch everything else fall apart. He had no choice than to seek for help. Daniel stood outside his girlfriend Lisa's apartment, hesitating before knocking. They had been together for over a year, and though things had been tense lately, he never imagined he'd be coming to her like this. Desperate, humiliated, with nothing to offer, but he had nowhere else to turn. He raised his hand and knocked softly at first, then harder when there was no answer. Finally, the door swung open. Lisa stood there, dressed in sleek athleisure wear, her phone in hand. She didn't smile when she saw him. "Daniel," her voice was flat. "What are you doing here?" He swallowed hard. "Lisa, I need help. Just for a little while. Things are bad. The accident. The job interviews. My landlord's threatening to kick me out." Before he could finish, she let out a sharp sigh and shook her head. "Oh my God, Daniel." Again. His stomach dropped. Again. "What do you mean?" She crossed her arms. "You're always in some crisis. Always needing something. I can't keep doing this." Daniel stared at her, his face burning. "Lisa, I just survived a bus crash. I've been starving for weeks. I'm not asking for much, just a place to stay until I figure things out." She let out a bitter laugh. "Figure things out? When? You've been figuring things out since you lost your last job. I can't keep waiting for you to get your shit together." He reached for her hand, but she jerked away. "Please," he said, voice cracking. "I love you. Just give me one more chance." Lisa's expression hardened. "No. I'm done. You're dragging me down, and I'm not going to drown with you." Daniel stood frozen as she stepped back inside. "Goodbye, Daniel," she said, and the door slammed in his face. He stood there for a long moment, his breath shaky, his entire body numb. Then, slowly, he turned and walked away, the last thread of hope snapping inside him. Then he went straight to his best friend's house. Daniel stood outside his best friend Mark's apartment, his stomach twisting with shame. They had been tight since college. Late-night talks, shared struggles, even crashing on each other's couches when times were rough. If anyone would help without judgment, it was Mark. He knocked, shifting his weight as he waited. The door opened, and Mark stood there, gaming headset around his neck, takeout containers on the table behind him. His expression flickered from surprise to something colder when he saw Daniel's hollowed-out face, his worn-out clothes. "Damn, bro," Mark said, not stepping aside to let him in. "You look like hell." Daniel forced a weak laugh. "Yeah, man, it's been a lot." He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "Listen, I'm in a bad spot. My landlord's about to kick me out, and I don't have." Whoa, Mark cut in, holding up a hand. "Don't tell me you're here to ask for money." The bluntness hit like a slap. Daniel's throat tightened. "Just a loan. Enough to cover rent this month. I'll pay you back as soon as." "Come on, Daniel," Mark scoffed, shaking his head. "You've been saying that for years. Next paycheck, next job. When's it actually gonna happen?" Daniel flinched. "This time's different. The accident, the interviews. Always something with you," Mark interrupted, voice rising. "You're a grown-ass man. Figure it out." He glanced back into his apartment, where the glow of his gaming setup and the smell of hot food hung in the air. "I'm not your damn safety net." Daniel's hands curled into fists at his sides. "I never asked you for shit before. Not when you got fired. Not when your girl left. I was there. Every time." Mark's face hardened. "Yeah, well, maybe that's your problem. Always playing the martyr. Nobody owes you shit, man." He stepped back, gripping the door. "Don't come here with your hand out again." The door slammed. Daniel stood there, breath coming fast, the betrayal like a knife between his ribs. His best friend, the one person he thought would never turn on him. He turned and walked away, the last of his pride crumbling to dust. Daniel wandered the streets, his mind numb, his feet dragging against the pavement. The weight of everything, The failed interviews, the eviction notice, Lisa's harsh words, Mark's betrayal pressed down on him like a physical force. He had no plan, no money, nowhere to go. His pockets were empty except for a single crumpled dollar bill, the last of what he had scraped together. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the sidewalk, when he noticed an old man sitting on a bench near a bus stop. The man's clothes were worn but clean, his hands rough with age. He held a bus ticket in one hand and patted his pockets with the other, frustration tightening his face. "Damn it," the old man muttered under his breath. "Must have dropped it." Daniel slowed, watching as the man checked his pockets again, his movements slow and deliberate. "You all right?" Daniel asked, his voice hoarse from hours of silence. The old man looked up, surprised. "Ah, just short $1 for the bus," he admitted, shaking his head. "Had it in my hand a minute ago. Must have slipped out somewhere." Daniel hesitated. That $1 was all he had left. If he gave it away, he'd have nothing, not even enough for a piece of bread. But the old man's tired eyes, the way his shoulders slumped in defeat, reminded him too much of his own father, years ago, struggling just to get by. Without another thought, Daniel pulled the $1 from his pocket and held it out. "Here," he said. The old man blinked. "Son, you sure?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah, take it." The man's face softened as he accepted the $1. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're a good kid." Daniel just shrugged and walked away, his stomach growling, his future uncertain. He didn't know where he'd sleep tonight or how he'd eat, but for the first time in weeks, the crushing weight on his chest felt a little lighter. 2 days later, Daniel sat on a park bench, staring blankly at the pigeons pecking at crumbs near his feet. He hadn't eaten since giving away his last $1, and exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. The city buzzed around him, people rushing to work, cars honking, life moving on while he stayed stuck in his own ruin. Then, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb beside him. The window rolled down, and a familiar voice called out, "You?" Daniel turned his head slowly. It was the old man from the bus stop. Only now, he was dressed in a sharp navy suit, his silver hair neatly combed, his posture commanding. Recognition flickered in the man's eyes, but Daniel was too drained to process it. "Get in," the man said, not as a request, but as a quiet order. Daniel hesitated. His instincts screamed caution. Strangers, luxury cars. Nothing good ever came from blind trust. But what did he have left to lose? He stood, his legs unsteady, and slid into the plush leather seat. The door shut with a solid thunk, sealing him in silence. The car smelled of polished wood and expensive cologne. The old man studied him for a long moment. "You look worse than you did 2 days ago," he said bluntly. Daniel let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, life's been rough." The man's gaze didn't waver. "Tell me what happened." And so, for the first time since the accident, Daniel did. He told him about the interviews, the bus crash, the way he walked away without a scratch while others didn't. He told him about the eviction notice, the girlfriend who shut the door in his face, the best friend who called him a burden. He even told him about the $1, the last thing he had, and how he gave it away without thinking. The old man listened, his expression unreadable. When Daniel finished, the car was silent except for the hum of the engine. Then, the man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Daniel. "You were supposed to interview with me," he said. Daniel's blood ran cold as he read the embossed lettering. Raymond Mercer, CEO, Mercer Holdings, the shell company. The interview he never made. Daniel's throat tightened. You were on that bus." Mercer's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "No, but my granddaughter was." He paused, his voice dropping. "She didn't walk away like you did." The weight of those words hung between them. Daniel's hands shook. Then Mercer leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "You gave me your last $1. Why?" Daniel had no answer. Or maybe he had too many. Mercer didn't wait for one. He tapped the divider, and the car pulled away from the curb, taking Daniel with it, into the unknown. The black car glided through the city, the tinted windows shielding Daniel from the outside world. His mind raced as he sat across from Raymond Mercer. The CEO's piercing gaze locked onto him. The silence was thick, charged with something unspoken. Finally, Mercer spoke. "You were supposed to interview for an entry-level analyst position," he said, his voice low and measured. "But I don't think that's where you belong." Daniel's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Mercer reached into the seat compartment and pulled out a sleek tablet. He tapped the screen and handed it to Daniel. "This is your new contract. You'll report directly to me as my executive strategist." Daniel's eyes widened as he scanned the document. The salary figure made his breath catch. 6 figures, plus bonuses, stock options, a company car, and at the bottom, a signing bonus wired immediately upon acceptance. This is a mistake, Daniel stammered. I didn't even make it to the interview. I have no experience at this level. Mercer cut him off with a raised hand. I don't care about resumes. I care about instinct. You gave away your last dollar to a stranger. That's not desperation. That's clarity. And in my world, that's rare. The car turned into the underground garage of a towering skyscraper. Mercer Holdings headquarters. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent. The tension coiled tight. When the doors opened, Daniel was met with a sprawling executive suite. Floor 2 ceiling windows overlooking the city. Mercer led him to a private office, his new office. A key card, a company phone, and a black Amex card lay on the desk. Your first task, Mercer said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, is to audit our shell operations in Zurich. Someone's been skimming. Find them. He leaned in, his eyes dark. You'll have unlimited resources. And discretion. Daniel's head spun. This wasn't just a job, it was a test of loyalty. A plunge into the deep end of power. Mercer turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and your landlord. Consider him handled. Before Daniel could respond, Mercer was gone. The weight of what just happened settled over him. No more hunger. No more evictions. No more begging. Just power, money, and a dangerous opportunity. All because of a single dollar he never expected to get back. And somewhere, deep down, he knew. This was only the beginning. Daniel's phone buzzed on the marble countertop of his penthouse. The screen lit up with a name he hadn't seen in months, Lisa. He stared at it, his jaw tightening. The last time they spoke, she had slammed the door in his face, calling him a burden. Now, here she was, reaching out. He swiped to answer but said nothing. Daniel, her voice was softer than he remembered, almost hesitant. I saw your feature in Forbes. You look good. A dry chuckle escaped him. Funny. You didn't think so when I was broke. Silence. Then, a shaky breath. I was wrong, okay? I was stressed, and I took it out on you. But I never stopped caring. Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. What do you want, Lisa? Another pause. I miss you. Can we talk? Just coffee. He almost laughed. Coffee. The same thing she used to complain about when he could only afford diner brew instead of her favorite overpriced lattes. I'll think about it, he said flatly, ending the call before she could respond. 3 days later, Daniel walked into Le Mirage, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, for a closed-door meeting with a Saudi investor. As he passed the bar, a familiar voice called out, Daniel, no way. He turned. Mark, his former best friend, stood there in a slightly wrinkled suit, a forced grin on his face. Too convenient. Small world, Daniel said, tone icy. Mark clapped him on the shoulder like old times. Man, I've been trying to reach you. Your assistant keeps blowing me off. Daniel didn't smile. Maybe there's a reason for that ... Mark's grin faltered. Look, I was an asshole, okay. But you know how it is, stress, life, whatever. Let's grab a drink and catch up. Daniel glanced at his Patek Philippe, then back at Mark. I would, but I've got a $20 million deal waiting. Rain check. He walked away without waiting for an answer. The weight of Mark's stunned silence, sweet as revenge. That night, as Daniel's driver pulled up to his building, a figure stepped in front of the car, Lisa, in a dress he recognized from better days. She knocked on his window, eyes pleading. Daniel, please, just 5 minutes. He rolled down the tinted glass, his expression unreadable. You've got 2 minutes. She swallowed hard. I know I messed up, but I love you. And I know you still love me too. Daniel leaned back, studying her. The same lips that once sneered at him now trembled with regret. Funny how love only matters when I'm rich, he said softly. Then, to his driver, go. As the car pulled away, he didn't look back. The next morning, his security team reported that Mark had tried to bypass the lobby with a fake delivery excuse. Lisa, meanwhile, had sent 37 unanswered texts. Daniel deleted them all. They had their chance. Now, he was untouchable. Fair weather loyalty is worthless. Lisa and Mark showed their true colors when Daniel was at his lowest, abandoning him the moment he couldn't benefit them. Their sudden change of heart, when he became successful, proved their loyalty was never genuine. Real relationships don't fluctuate with bank accounts. Daniel didn't seek revenge. He didn't gloat. He simply outgrew them. His success wasn't about rubbing their faces in it. It was the universe balancing the scales. Those who kick you down will always look up when you rise. The old CEO didn't help Daniel because he was smart, qualified, or even lucky. He helped him because one selfless act revealed who Daniel really was. Meanwhile, Lisa and Mark's selfishness in his darkest hour exposed who they really were. Daniel didn't waste energy on anger or pettiness. He moved forward, leaving them behind. Their desperation to crawl back was their own punishment. They had to live with knowing they burned a bridge they could never rebuild. Lisa claimed she never stopped caring, and Mark pretended their friendship meant something, but actions don't lie. Daniel's greatest power wasn't his wealth. It was his ability to walk away and never look back. The story wasn't about money. It was about who stayed, gone when he had nothing, and who came crawling back when he had everything. Don't be deceived by fake people. They are everywhere. Thanks for listening.